So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it happens to be while you're watching this. I'm back with another one. Been a minute since I did one. Been kind of wrapped up with a bunch of, I guess you could say, things called life. Finally closed on my house after a month of delays, and so finally freeing care of that. So, I'm back with another one. This one is about my take on, let's just call it uncivil communication. So, Facebook friend of mine made a post. I'm sure we've all seen them. We all had friends that have done them. That talks about and complains about what's wrong with our society, and we can't have civil discourse or blah 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 blah, that kind of stuff anymore. Which it's arguably true. So, I wanted to give my take on what I see as the major issue or issues, actually. So, with that being said, I made a comment, reply back to my buddy, and he kind of agreed. So, here's my take on this. Why can we, as a populace, not just within the United States, this kind of is global, have any type of civil discourse when we're discussing a topic we disagree on? I think the main reason is we as a society, global society, have lost the ability to admit when we are wrong. We have lost the ability to accept correction, and we've lost the ability to thank those that have corrected us. That's, I think, one of our biggest issues. If you think about it, and I'm going to delve into this a little bit more, think about the last time you were in a debate, discussion, argument, whatever, and part way, halfway, main way, all the way in, whatever that time happened to be, when you realize, oh shit, I was wrong, but you refuse to back down. I've done it. I think the majority of us done it. Even when somebody shows you via a video or news article, whatever, where you were actually wrong. How many of you have kept arguing just to avoid having to admit you were wrong? We have lost that ability as a global society. And I'm speaking mainly for the general populace, because there's still people that have these kind of debates and discussions. And we've watched, I don't know if you've ever watched TED Talks and that kind of stuff, where people actually have those. But we as a general populace, hardly any of us have that ability anymore. Everybody has, you've all heard this, everybody has the right to their own opinion, right? Well, that's fine. You do. And I'll never say you don't. However, my take on this is, if your opinion is based off a lie, an untruth, misinformation, or incomplete information, well, you have a right to your opinion, but your opinion is wrong. I see it as, I'm going to say, an obligation to correct you, not because I want to, take the W and make you take the L and ridicule you forever. You're just wrong, and you're pushing out information that is wrong. So, okay, I'll admit I'm a human. There are sometimes I see stuff and I want to go after people because what they're posting or talking about or saying is just idiotic. But if it's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't mean that, just because it's your opinion doesn't alleviate you from the accountability of truth. Especially if you are in a public sphere. Social media is a public sphere. Or you're, having a discussion amongst friends or whatever, and you spout off your opinion and it happens to be wrong, and somebody corrects you or attempts to correct you, why do you get mad? Take part in that debate, take part in that discussion. You might actually learn something about yourself, learn something about the other person, learn something about the subject with which you're talking about. But we can't do that anymore. Civilly, anyway. I think some of that is happening because we collectively, our educational and intelligence level is much lower than what it used to be. If you look at, global educational standards or educational scores, the United States, as an example, has dropped in the last 20, 25 years. We used to be in the top 5 of every measured category. Now we don't meet in the top 5 of any of the measured categories. Our populace is being dumbed down. You look at academia, where 85% plus of academia, the teachers and educators, are leftist, left-leaning people, all the way to include radical lefts. There's a thing that came out not too long ago where the number one, the number one employment of those that have been arrested and charged during the riots and looting and everything, not the protest, but the rioting part of it, are educators. That's who's educating us. That's who's educating you, your children, that kind of stuff, right? So we're being educated by a very non-diverse system, and we have all collectively lost our intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence. Because I say that because if you say something that to be, what you thought is the truth, and then somebody corrects you, one of the first things we do is get mad or upset or irritated, other than, oh, well, this person said something that's different than what I said, but maybe I should research, look into, and figure out if I'm right or they're right, right? We don't do that anymore. We argue. We throw insults. We lob shells at each other. And we take the correction from somebody as a personal insult. How dare you, correct me? How dare you say that I'm wrong? And it's not that you're actually wrong. It's you're offended. There's a whole another topic but that's another video. I also blame social media, and kind of specifically Twitter, for a lot of this as well, because excuse me, I'm sorry. When Twitter first started up and became popular, and billion users or whatever, you only had 144 characters to make your point, right? So in Twitter, there was no, still even to this day, real way to have a intellectual discussion with somebody. You only have a limited amount of space, and you have to get your jab in as quickly as you can. Not your point, not your truth, not the fact, not the truth, but your insult, your jab. You're trying to get them to shut up. It's not a exchange of information. It's an exchange of insults, and that mentality has completely creeped in and taken over our civil discourse. I mean, even on like a social media platform like Facebook, you can write a whole damn book, and have those lengthy discussions. But what generally ends up happening is you have somebody who shoots, multiple questions or insults or whatever at you while you're trying to put out a well-worded, factual statement. So now you're having to respond to those first 10 questions, and by the time you get, to answer question number 2 of theirs, they shoot you with 6 more, and then they, throw up their hands and claim victory. No, that's not a victory. You're just typing faster than me, and you're typing one sentence replies. You're tweeting to me, if you will, at Facebook. So I blame that aspect of social media on why we can't have civil discourse. And then you have the old adage of the whole people are comfortable with insulting others because they know they're not going to get punched in the face for it, right? That whole concept. I think that has a lot to do with it too. There's a lot of power behind anonymity. I mean, if you know me on Facebook, I generally pretty much know you in real life, so you know who I am. But if I'm in a group or on a page having a debate with somebody that I'm not friends with, never met before in my life, I can say whatever hell I want to. There's no real repercussions for it, right? I might end up in Facebook jail, or whatever. But there's a very tangible and power behind it, anonymity. You can it's not that you're smarter and have a better argument than them. It's just that you don't have to face the music in real life, right? You don't have to take that punch to the nose because you called somebody a whatever D-bag or whatever insult you come up with. And another part that I think is happening is more current. One of the more current things is this whole my truth. I despise this with a passion. There's many reasons why. The basic tenet of it is, of me disliking this, is a truth and a fact is a fact. It's not your truth. It's not my truth. It's the truth. Nobody has singular possession of the truth, right? So I also see that the my truth is a dodge. It is a complete dodge to avoid being corrected or having to do research because somebody calls you out, or any type of self-exploration to see why you think a certain way. What led you to believe that this is your truth, right? It's a complete and total dodge. And my truth is also a dodge when it comes to debating whatever the topic happens to be, because nobody, in this day and age, nobody wants to offend anybody or whatever. So when somebody says it's my truth, that people are now accepting that, oh, that's the end of this argument. Shouldn't be. That's just a complete intellectual lazy way of defending something that you've asserted to be the truth. It might be the truth. It could be part of the truth, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the actual truth, right? My truth is more accurately my experience. Your experiences make up who you are, right? But your experience is vastly different than my truth. I give the example. You can have two witnesses who saw something happen and give two completely different descriptions of the person that did whatever, right? We've all heard this and seen this before. Well, you have different perceptions, you have different filters, you had a bad angle, whatever. So my truth, or what I'm saying is your actual experience, may only be a limited, narrow view of the bigger truth. And this other person might also have a very limited, narrow view of the truth, but they're both claiming that that is the actual truth. You also have the old adage of, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? Well, if you're talking in the world of my truth, well, that person's truth is that this is trash. This other person's truth is that this is treasure. Well, so what is it? Is it trash or is it treasure? It's a matter of perception, right? But the truth is that it is something. What your connotation is to it, or what you value it at, is irrelevant to the actual thing. I hope that makes sense. So I sit back and I watch, and I've been guilty of jumping into the foray of debate and not so nice. But when I see stuff on Facebook or whatever social media platform I have to be on, and I know it's just, I scroll past it because I find myself not wanting to engage in a debate. Big reasons why is because it's hard also on computer to denote facial expressions, voice inflection, body language, sarcasm, because I'm fluent in it and people take it as an insult when I'm just being sarcastic. But I don't want the headache and hassle of waiting for somebody to get through their temper tantrum, which always happens. And then once they finally settle down for their temper tantrum, then possibly having a discussion with them on any type of adult level, right? It doesn't even happen anymore. And I've been in debate groups where it's not debating, it's just who's got the better insult, who can lob the more vicious, hyperbole attacks, right? And I think it's sad because, I took debate classes in high school, and I love debate. I love discussions. And people, think that I just love to argue. Well, no, it's fact finding, it's truth finding, it's discovering things about other people. They believe a certain way. Well, okay, I want to know why, right? But I go back to, I kind of base a majority of my take on debate with some people call it the original debate, which took place during the creation of an enactment of the Constitution. You have the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. And for those of you who don't know what this is about, there was a huge debate between the states with the creation and implementation of the Constitution. There were two states specifically, New York and Pennsylvania, that were unwilling to sign the Constitution. And they had their reasons. Those were the Anti-Federalists. Well, so the Anti-Federalists engaged into a public debate with the Federalists, 3 of them specifically, through the social media of the day, through the newspapers. So this debate took place in newspaper articles. It was a back and forth and back and forth. And if you were to actually sit and read this argument, and I'll tie this back into our education thing, where it's hard to read it and comprehend what they're saying. I mean, their language and vernacular of the day is vastly different than what we have at this day and age. But the concepts are complex. They're intricate. They're very detailed, very wordy. But here are these 2 diametrically opposed people, or groups of people, having a debate about the architecture that's going to create a newly founded country. This isn't small potatoes. This was something that literally changed the course of the world, and they were debating it. There wasn't hyperbole. There wasn't ad hominems. They weren't insulting each other. It was a back and forth about 2 ideologies that were diametrically opposed to each other, and they ended up finding a common ground and ended up signing and enacting the Constitution. And just for the record, the final acquiescence, if you will, of the Federalists was to create and implement or put into the Constitution the actual Bill of Rights. That's what sold the Constitution to New York and Philadelphia, or New York and Pennsylvania. But I say all that because, just today, in this day and age, we're all at each other's throats and arguing about presidential candidates, right? We are polar opposites. We are split. The divide is unpassable in a lot of instances. But yet, and we argue with each other, we fight and we insult, and we've lost family members and, old friends and that kind of stuff over this whole thing. But yet, not 150 years ago, or a little 150 years ago, there was people debating about the founding of a brand new nation, and they didn't get to this level. They disliked each other. I'm not going to say they didn't, but the debate they had through the newspapers was extremely intelligent, respectful. There was a couple of jibes that were slipped in, but in the overall concept, it was an extremely intelligent discussion and debate between 2 diametrically opposed positions. There's no way in hell that would happen in this day and age. Could you just imagine that debate taking place on Twitter, Facebook, Parler, whatever, right? You think that's going to happen in this day and age? No, it's not, because we can't do that anymore. We always have to be right. We cannot be wrong. My truth cannot possibly be wrong. If I'm wrong, then my world ends. Right? That's the that's the concept of the ideology that people have this day and age. I have a hard time accepting when I'm wrong, but when I see it in black and white, and the retort to me from somebody is, thought out and true, I accept it. All right, I'll take the L on this one. You got the W on this one. Congratulations, and thank you for correcting me. But we've, as a populace, have completely abandoned and just separated ourselves from that ability. And it's sad. It's mind-boggling to me. I'm not sitting here claiming, I don't have a PhD and I have these credentials, whatever. I'm a graduate of a public high school with some college, but I can still have a debate with people. I can still discuss with people. I can be down and dirty with them if that's the way they want to go, or I can be high and clean with them. It's, my opponent is the one who dictates that course. But come the end of the day, I can have that discussion with just about anybody, as long as they're willing to listen. If they can demonstrate to me, if they've demonstrated to me, they have the ability to listen, and I can engage with them into a debate. Then we can move forward. And I'm going to leave with this one last thought. In debate, or when you're writing a debate paper, if you will, you have to cite your sources, right? We all remember that from our high school and college, whatever. So one of the main problems we have now, too, is I use sources because if you're having a discussion about subject A, right, and you use this particular source, that particular source happened to be wrong on subject B last year. Your opponent typically goes back and go, oh, well, here's where your source was wrong, so your source is therefore voided. They're not a good source, right? That's not how that works. They may have been wrong on subject B, but have they been wrong, demonstrably wrong on subject A? If they have been, then your opponent is correct. But if they have not been wrong on subject A, okay, they were wrong on subject B, but what does that have to do with subject A? That's a straw man. You're attacking the source incorrectly. But that connotation kind of spills over too, to where if you're having a discussion or debate with somebody and you lost to them per se in another discussion or whatever, well, now that's also held against you. Oh, you didn't know what you're talking about this subject, so you obviously don't know what you're talking about in this subject. It's such a fallacy and such a intellectual lazy dodge that it drives me crazy too. But our media does it. So that's what I got to say about that. Hope you enjoyed. And on that, I'll say goodnight, Gracie.